Think your muscles are fading just because you're aging? What if the real culprit is your breakfast? In this video, we're ranking 7 everyday breakfasts, from the ones quietly stealing your strength to the ones that can rebuild it after 60. One of them might be on your plate right now. Tap like, hit subscribe, and tell me, if you could eat any breakfast guilt-free, what would it be? Let's hear it in the comments. And now, it's time for the intro. 3, 2, 1. I remember visiting Helen for a routine house call one crisp October morning. She was 73, sharp-witted, and lived alone in a quiet neighborhood in Boulder. When I asked how she was doing, she gave me a small smile and said, "I'm fine, just a bit slower these days." But as she stood up to greet me, I noticed the slight tremble in her knees and the way she gripped the arm of the chair just a little too long before taking a step. We spent some time talking, running through her meds, her recent blood work. All looked fine. No major illnesses. No major falls. But something wasn't adding up. "It feels like I'm fading," she admitted quietly, "and I don't know why." What struck me most wasn't what was wrong, but what was missing. Her strength, her stability, both slowly slipping without any obvious cause. So I started asking different questions. Not about medications or exercise. I asked about breakfast. Helen laughed. "Oh, nothing fancy," she said. "Usually a blueberry muffin and coffee with that sweet creamer. It's my little treat." It hit me then, like it has with so many patients over the years, we underestimate how much our first meal of the day shapes the rest of our body's performance. Especially after 60, breakfast isn't just a habit, it's a signal to your muscles. Are we feeding them fuel? Or are we quietly letting them break down? That's why today, I want to take you through the 7 most common breakfasts I see in seniors, ranked from the ones doing the most harm to the ones that can help you rebuild lost strength. This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Because once you understand why something's hurting you, it's a whole lot easier to start choosing better. Let's dive in together. You might find that some of your favorite morning choices are on the lower end of the list, but don't worry, we'll talk about simple, realistic swaps for each one. No lectures, just real talk. From one human to another. When Helen mentioned her morning muffin and sweet coffee, I knew we had to start at the very bottom of the list, with what I call the sweet trap breakfast. And Helen's not alone. It's one of the most common habits I see in my older patients, especially those who live alone or are trying to treat themselves to something comforting at the start of the day. Let me tell you about Walter. He's 65, a retired postal worker from Cheyenne, Wyoming. We met after his daughter insisted he come in for a checkup because, in her words, "Dad's starting to walk like he's 90. Walter wasn't sick. He wasn't in pain. But over the last year, he'd lost stamina. His legs felt heavy, his back ached, and he had trouble getting out of low chairs. When I asked him what his mornings looked like, he grinned and said, "Doctor, you can't scold me, it's my retirement reward. I have a cinnamon roll with icing and a caramel latte almost every morning. Just feels like a little joy, you know." And I do know. There's nothing wrong with enjoying your food. But here's what most folks don't realize. These ultra-sweet breakfasts, especially when paired with sugary drinks, cause a spike and crash pattern in your blood sugar that wreaks havoc on your body's ability to maintain and rebuild muscle. See, every time you load up on fast sugars, like pastries, syrupy coffee, or sweetened cereals, your insulin levels surge. In small doses, your body handles it. But when it becomes a routine, it creates inflammation, encourages fat storage, especially around your belly and organs, and interferes with the natural process your body uses to repair muscle overnight. Walter's cinnamon roll was more than just sugar, it was a chain reaction. His muscles weren't getting the amino acids they needed. His joints were inflamed. And even worse, he was experiencing mild brain fog by mid-morning because of the glucose roller coaster. And maybe this sounds familiar to you, too. You feel good for an hour or two. Then you crash. Your energy dips. Your joints feel stiff. You find yourself reaching for a second coffee or a mid-morning snack, often something sweet again. It becomes a cycle. So how do you know if you've been caught in the sweet trap? Look for these signs. You wake up hungry but feel tired again by 10 a.m. Your ankles or fingers are slightly puffy in the morning. You crave something sweet every day, especially in the morning. Now, I'm not here to take away your comfort. But what if we could shift the comfort into something that still brings you joy, without robbing your muscles? Here's what I told Walter: start small. Instead of a cinnamon roll, try a slice of sprouted grain toast with almond butter and a sprinkle of cinnamon. Want that warm, sweet feeling in your drink? Use unsweetened almond milk and add a dash of real vanilla or a few drops of stevia. And don't worry, it won't feel like punishment. Walter was skeptical, too. But within 4 weeks of changing his breakfast, not only did he feel more energized in the morning, he also noticed he could climb stairs without holding the railing. His daughter called me to say, "I think he's walking faster than me now." It's never about perfection. It's about noticing what's holding you back and gently letting it go, one morning at a time. After Walter made a few changes and started gaining strength, he said something that stuck with me. "At least I was eating something," he chuckled. "My sister doesn't eat anything till noon." And just like that, we move one notch up the list, but only barely. Because if sugary breakfasts break you down, skipping breakfast altogether leaves your muscles starving for even a fighting chance. Let me introduce you to Grace. She's 70, a retired librarian from a quiet suburb outside of Portland. I met her during a local community wellness event where I offered free checkups. Grace looked well on the outside, neatly dressed in a lavender sweater, silver hair pulled into a bun, but when I asked how she was feeling lately, her smile faltered. "I've been tripping over things," she said. "Not falling, just catching my toe a lot. And I'm not sure why." Grace wasn't frail. She didn't have any major medical history. But as we kept talking, a pattern emerged. She lived alone. No pets. No regular breakfast. "I usually just wait until lunch," she shrugged. "It feels like too much effort in the morning." I hear this more often than you'd expect, especially from older adults living by themselves. When no one's there to share a meal with, or when the idea of cooking just feels like a chore, people skip breakfast entirely. The problem is, your muscles don't wait for lunch. See, during the night, your body naturally breaks down muscle tissue to use for repair and energy. This is normal. But by morning, your body's ready to rebuild, and it needs the right raw materials: amino acids, glucose, hydration. When breakfast doesn't happen, your body simply continues breaking down. In Grace's case, her balance issues weren't due to weakness in the legs alone. It was a slow erosion of neuromuscular coordination, something that's highly dependent on stable energy and protein availability. Her body, simply put, didn't have the fuel to maintain the signals between brain and muscle. I didn't tell Grace to start cooking full meals every morning. That's not realistic for everyone. What I did recommend was this: a simple breakfast smoothie with almond milk, a scoop of plant-based protein, half a banana, and a spoon of peanut butter. Takes 2 minutes. No stove. No pan. We also set a gentle goal: no skipping more than 1 breakfast per week. Within 6 weeks, she told me she wasn't tripping anymore. "And my cat is mad," she joked, "because now I get to the kitchen faster than he does." Skipping breakfast may feel harmless, especially if your appetite's small or your mornings are quiet. But in people over 60, it's the silent fast that turns into slow breakdown. Your muscles need consistency. And giving them something, even something small, first thing in the day, can mean the difference between stumbling and striding. So if you're not eating in the morning because you're not hungry, ask yourself, is it really hunger, or just habit? Because habit is something we can rewire. One small step at a time. After Grace began eating something, anything, in the mornings, her energy noticeably improved. But not all breakfasts are created equal. And sometimes, even when we think we're doing the right thing, we're unknowingly choosing meals that are, well, empty. Let me tell you about the Jennings couple. They're both in their late 60s and had been seeing me for years. Lovely folks. Mr. Jennings was a retired mechanic, his wife a former elementary school teacher. When they came in one spring for their annual checkup, they had no major complaints. But I noticed Mr. Jennings rubbing his lower back often and shifting uncomfortably in the chair. I think it's just old age, he said with a chuckle. But his reflexes were slower, and his grip test showed mild loss in hand strength compared to last year. Nothing drastic, but enough to raise a red flag. So, as usual, I asked about breakfast. Every morning for the last 10 years, Mrs. Jennings beamed, we split a toasted white bagel with a little jelly, and I make some white rice porridge when it's cold out. We keep it light. And there it was. Here's the thing, foods like white toast, white rice porridge, or even instant oatmeal packets might feel light and gentle on the stomach, but they do little for your muscles. These are what we call refined carbohydrates. They've been stripped of fiber, protein, and most nutrients. They digest fast, spike your blood sugar, and leave your body with nothing to build on. Think of it this way, your muscles are like a construction site. And every morning, you're either sending in bricks and mortar, or sending in packing peanuts. The Jennings breakfasts were all foam, no substance. Now, they weren't in pain. Not yet. But if nothing changed, the slow wear and tear would only continue. Mr. Jennings' backache wasn't from aging bones, it was underfueled muscle fibers working too hard to do their job. So we made a small change, we kept the ritual of toasting bread, but switched to sprouted whole grain. They added a boiled egg each, and a few slices of avocado when in season. It still feels like breakfast, Mrs. Jennings said, but I don't get hungry by 10 a.m. anymore. The idea isn't to overhaul your entire pantry overnight. It's about upgrading your habits, keeping what feels familiar, but adding what's functional. Because when you're over 60, you don't just need calories, you need quality. So if your breakfast looks pale and processed, ask yourself, where's the color? Where's the protein? Where's the strength? You deserve better than soft and easy. You deserve strong and steady. After the Jennings made their simple upgrade, from white carbs to whole grains and protein, they started feeling more stable, energized, and clear-headed. But as we move further up the list, we reach a type of breakfast that feels hearty, even satisfying, yet it slowly wears your body down from the inside out. Let's talk about salt. More specifically, the kind that sneaks into your plate under the disguise of flavor-packed favorites, bacon, sausage, ham, and most breakfast meats. I once had a patient named Leo. He was 76, tall, lean, and proud of being old school. Every morning, he'd fry up 2 eggs, a few strips of bacon, and toast. Real food, he'd say with a grin. None of that powdered shake nonsense. Now, Leo wasn't being reckless. He walked daily, stayed active, even helped his neighbors with yard work. But he came in one day complaining of constant stiffness, especially in his hands and ankles. No redness, no injury, just a dull tightness that lingered. When I ran some labs, his kidney markers were slightly elevated, not alarming, but worth noting. His sodium levels were consistently on the high end. That, paired with inflammation markers just above the normal range, pointed to one likely culprit: salt overload. You see, high-sodium foods don't just affect your blood pressure. They also create a chronic, low-grade inflammatory state in the body. For older adults, this inflammation can quietly interfere with muscle recovery and even reduce hydration inside the muscle cells, making them less elastic and more prone to micro tears. Leo's breakfast, while protein-rich, came wrapped in preservatives, nitrates, and over 1,200 milligrams of sodium, nearly his entire daily limit, in one sitting. Over time, this kind of load starts to chip away at joint comfort and muscle function. He was surprised. "I thought I was doing better than cereal," he said. And in some ways, he was. But we had to find a middle ground. So we swapped the bacon for a small fillet of grilled salmon or leftover roasted turkey slices from dinner. The eggs stayed, but we added some spinach sautéed in olive oil and a slice of whole grain toast. Same routine. Better results. After a month, Leo told me, "I still feel like myself, just not so creaky." That's the goal. So if your breakfast comes sizzling out of a pan and smells irresistible, take a second look. Ask, is this real nourishment, or just salt dressed up as tradition? Your muscles don't need that much sodium to thrive. But they do need care. After Leo cut back on the salt and found his balance again, it reminded me how even healthy-looking breakfasts can miss the mark, especially when it comes to feeding aging muscles. Take granola, for example. Or multi-grain cereal with almond milk. These sound like smart choices, and they often are better than a plate full of processed meat or sugar. But let me be honest, they're often missing the one ingredient your muscles crave the most: complete protein. I'll use myself as an example here. A few years ago, I was in the habit of eating what I thought was a clean, energizing breakfast: a bowl of granola, a splash of unsweetened almond milk, and some blueberries on top. Light, crunchy, and easy. But strangely enough, I started noticing a recurring tightness in my lower back after long clinic shifts. My energy was decent, but my recovery after a workout? Sluggish. Something was off. So I looked at my own nutrition like I would with any patient. That breakfast only gave me about 4 or 5 grams of protein. Now, for someone over 60, that's like showing up to a construction site with one hammer and no nails. Your muscles need building blocks, and most plant-based breakfasts are only giving you half the tools. Here's what helped me: I added 1 hard-boiled egg and a spoonful of peanut butter to my usual routine. Just those 2 small tweaks more than doubled my protein intake in the morning. Within 2 weeks, my back felt more supported, and my post-lunch slump disappeared. So no, I'm not saying you need to throw out your granola. But think of it like this: it's a foundation, not the full structure. Add a side of Greek yogurt, a boiled egg, or even some cottage cheese. Build the plate your muscles are quietly asking for. Because good enough breakfasts, they might keep you going, but they won't keep you strong. Once I learned to add protein back into my own breakfast, I started noticing which of my patients were already doing it right, often without realizing just how much it was helping them. One of those patients was Julia, 67, a retired florist who still volunteered at her neighborhood food co-op. She came in for a routine visit, and as we went through the usual questions, she mentioned something that made me pause. "You know," she said, "I used to dread grocery shopping. My arms would get so tired just holding the basket. But now, it's like someone turned the power back on." Curious, I asked what had changed. "Honestly, just breakfast," she smiled. "I started making myself eggs and vegetables in the morning instead of toast with jam. And that was it. Nothing fancy, just a couple of scrambled eggs, some sautéed spinach or bell peppers, and a slice of whole grain toast." But for her muscles, it was a morning rescue mission. You see, eggs are rich in leucine, an amino acid your muscles especially need for growth and repair. Pair that with fiber and antioxidants from colorful veggies, and you've got a breakfast that doesn't just fill your stomach, it fuels your recovery. And the beauty of it? Julia wasn't following a strict plan or tracking macros. She just listened to her body. "I feel less stiff, and I don't get shaky before lunch anymore," she told me. That's muscle metabolism getting back on track. So if you're already eating eggs and veggies in the morning, congratulations, you're doing better than most. And if not, try starting small: 1 egg, one handful of greens. Maybe a slice of whole grain bread. Nothing extreme. Just enough to say, here you go, muscles, let's get moving today. It's a simple meal, but in my book, it's one of the most powerful. After Julia's egg and veggie mornings gave her strength back, I thought we had already hit the sweet spot of senior breakfasts. But there's one more level, simple, balanced, and backed by science, that I often call the quiet champion of muscle-friendly meals, Greek yogurt with seeds and berries. Let me introduce you to Marvin. He's 80 years old, a retired piano teacher with the gentlest hands and a memory like a steel trap. But a year ago, his knees had started bothering him. He told me he could no longer climb the stairs in his home without resting halfway. He wasn't on any new medication. His blood work looked steady. But when we looked deeper, it turned out his breakfast routine had slowly slipped into nothingness. A slice of toast here, maybe a cup of coffee there. Nothing solid. Nothing real. That's when I suggested a breakfast bowl that combined what the body needs most after 60, complete protein, gut support, and antioxidants. His new morning routine. 1 cup of plain Greek yogurt, a tablespoon of chia or flax seeds, and a handful of fresh berries, blueberries, raspberries, whatever was in season. 3 weeks later, Marvin was back in my office, beaming. "Doc," he said, "I made it up the stairs without stopping. I even forgot I used to stop. This breakfast might look light, but it's a powerhouse. Greek yogurt provides double the protein of regular yogurt. The seeds add omega-3s and fiber. And those berries? They fight inflammation like tiny bodyguards for your joints and muscles. The best part? It doesn't require a stove, a recipe, or even a lot of time. Just a bowl, a spoon, and a few smart ingredients. So if you're looking for a breakfast that does more than just taste good, something that actively helps your body stay mobile, strong, and sharp, this one earns the top spot for a reason. Sometimes, healing starts with something as simple as a spoonful. After seeing Marvin regain his strength just by changing his breakfast, I thought, it's time we zoom out. You've now seen the full journey, from the most harmful breakfasts to the ones that can truly support your body after 60. So let's walk back through it, side by side, in plain terms. At the very bottom, we started with the sugary pastries and sweetened coffees. These may bring momentary pleasure, but they quietly promote inflammation, spike your blood sugar, and sabotage muscle repair. Just one cinnamon roll and a flavored latte can undo a night's worth of healing. Then came the skipped breakfasts. They may seem harmless, especially when you're not hungry, but in reality, they rob your muscles of the fuel they need to recover and maintain function. Eating nothing in the morning is like asking your muscles to run a race without shoes. Next were the white carbs, white bread, white rice, or plain toast. These foods give quick energy but lack the fiber, protein, and micronutrients your muscles need to stay strong. They leave you full for an hour and weak for the rest of the day. Salt-heavy breakfasts followed: bacon, sausage, ham. They pack in protein but drown your system in sodium and preservatives, leading to stiffness, dehydration, and low-grade inflammation that chips away at your joints and muscle elasticity. Then we stepped into the almost good zone, like granola with almond milk. Better than skipping, yes. But still lacking in protein and long-lasting fuel. These meals are light but incomplete. When we reached the top two, we saw the real power of food: eggs with vegetables and whole grains, simple, savory, and incredibly effective for muscle support. And finally, Greek yogurt with seeds and berries, the quiet powerhouse. Easy to prepare, packed with protein, anti-inflammatories, and probiotics to support not just your muscles, but your gut and joints, too. You don't have to overhaul your pantry tomorrow. But now, you have a map. You know which breakfasts quietly wear you down, and which ones quietly lift you up. So the next time you stand in your kitchen, ask yourself not just, what do I feel like eating, but, what do I want to feel like later today? Because breakfast isn't just about taste. It's about strength. About movement. About being able to carry your groceries or climb your stairs. It's the first thing your muscles hear in the morning, and now, you know how to speak their language. Now that we've walked through the 7 breakfasts, from the ones that quietly weaken you to the ones that can help rebuild your strength, I hope you're seeing your mornings a little differently. This isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. And more importantly, it's about power, your power to choose what supports you, one simple meal at a time. The patients I've shared with you, Helen, Walter, Grace, the Jennings, Leo, Julia, and Marvin, aren't extraordinary. They're people just like you. They didn't chase extreme diets or complicated plans. They just made small changes. And those changes added up to stronger legs, better balance, less pain, and more confidence in their day-to-day lives. So now, I'd love to hear from you. What does your typical breakfast look like? And after today's video, is there one small change you'd be willing to try tomorrow morning? Leave me a comment, no pressure, no judgment. Let's share and learn from each other. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you care about. Because sometimes, the path to strength starts with the quietest decision, what you put on your plate.